start at the very beginning. I didn't cry when I was born. I didn't cry on my first day to school. One day, when I came back from my preschool, I was very quiet. Nobody noticed. The next morning, my parents heard me say the words I'd never said before. I don't want to go to school today. My parents persuaded me to tell them why. I didn't. That's when Papa lifted me in his arms and took me to the garden outside, where he'd built a swing for me. As I swung, I softly told him that a teacher in school had slapped me. Papa was getting late for work, but he dressed up in a hurry. That was the first time I saw him leave the house without polishing his shoes. He held my hand to take me with him. I resisted. I didn't want to go. Frankly, I was really scared. He said, and I remember the exact words, though I was barely 4. As long as I am with you, you never need to be scared. I sat behind his Bajaj scooter and held him tight as he drove me to my play school. I always used to stand in the front, but my legs were shaking too much that day. I had no clue what was going to happen next. When we reached the school, the events became a blur. Papa was yelling at everyone and everything. Again, a line he said, and I never forgot, was, "अगर किसी ने मेरी बच्ची पे हाथ उठाया, मैं स्कूल को जला के राख कर दूंगा. If anyone touches my girl again, I will burn this school down." A teacher came forward, trying to pacify my father, but nobody stood a chance in front of Papa when he was enraged. Both this teacher who was trying to calm him down and my father repeatedly asked me, "Who slapped you?" I just stared at that teacher's face, amazed. It was her. I almost spoke. I wish I had, but something held me back. Probably it was the disbelief as to how somebody could lie so blatantly without a hint of guilt. This teacher, who had slapped me yesterday, was now patting my head. As she looked at me with her big, innocent eyes, I told myself, perhaps my memory had failed me. Nobody could have two such drastic sides to their personality. As Papa finally drove me back home, besides feeling safer and more secure, I felt something else. I couldn't define it then. I can't define it now. But probably it was the realization that for the first time I had kept something to myself, not told my father something that needed to be told. I had sacrificed my integrity for someone least worthy of it. When I turned 4, besides my brand new scooter, which was orange in color, there was another addition to our family, Manjeet. He was my dad's junior and colleague from work. He was my mother's confidant. In a time when my parents were struggling to manage home and work, he would help around the house, run errands, and somehow he made our tiny family complete. He was extra help in a time when my parents were disgruntled with each other. He helped calm the waters. He was a godsend. I called him Pa. He was also the best playmate anyone could ask for, always coming up with new ideas and innovative games. My mother wasn't too fond of me playing with him too often though. No mother would. But one night when she was busy in the kitchen making me my favorite rajma, I sneaked up behind him to learn a new game. He taught me one called Escape the Crocodile. He would be the crocodile and trap me between his legs. I had to escape him. Simple. But there was something about that game. Maybe the fact that it was forbidden, but it was much more exciting than any game I'd ever played. The fight to escape, the way he held me back, the way I tried to free myself. I never understood the look of horror on my mother's face when she walked in on us playing that game, and why she forbade us from playing it ever again. Now I do. It was the eve of Diwali in 2002. Enjoying my Diwali break to the fullest, I was watching the movie Josh late night on TV with Pa. My parents were asleep in the adjacent room, and he was babysitting me to ensure that I actually slept once the movie was over. I was comfortable in my pajamas, the cool November breeze sending goosebumps up my spine as I sought refuge under my duvet. He sensed me feeling cold, and so he put his arms around me and pulled me closer. He placed my head on his chest. As Shah Rukh sang, "Ye uska style hoga, hoton pe na dil mein haan hoga," he leaned in and kissed me. I was 10 years old. It's been 15 long years, but I can still taste it in my mouth and still feel the guilt in my stomach. Because even then I knew something was very, very wrong. The next morning, we went to buy vegetables, and that was when he told me that he loved me. And just like the teacher who had acted so innocent before my father, I believed him. My only experience of love before that was from Shah Rukh's movies, and I had imagined a Prince Charming would sweep me off my feet, kiss me gently, as I felt nervous butterflies in my stomach. However, my first kiss didn't bring me any fluttering butterflies. I couldn't brag about it to my friends. It only brought me a world of shame and confusion. Love was sacred, always. Ever since I first saw Shah Rukh travel all across those countries to impress Kajol's family in a house where she was engaged to somebody else, I knew that the person I would fall for would win me over with his charm and integrity. I knew that this person I would always be able to trust, because this person, my prince, would fight for me, for us, in the face of a million adversities. I also knew deep down that he would try to woo my parents also, because he would know that without them, there is no me. I had imagined roses and violins, chocolates and heart-shaped cards, and hands that fit perfectly into each other's. However, as he said he loved me, he said nobody would understand because of our age difference. Again, I believed him. He told me I had to keep it a secret. I grappled with this. I remember walking in silence, unable to comprehend what was happening and what I was supposed to do. Love should be shouted from mountain tops, not hidden in the dark like some dirty little secret. This was the morning of Diwali. That night, Mum and Dad went out to buy me crackers when I ran out of mine. When he and I were left alone was when I finally gathered some courage to tell him that what he was doing was wrong and I didn't want any part of it. That's when he told me that it wasn't him, but me who had initiated that kiss, that I had wanted to kiss him the previous night. I was scared to refute him, and frankly, I've always been anxious around confrontations, having seen so many between my parents. So I just said, I don't want to kiss you anymore. It feels wrong. That's when his professed, undying love for me changed to threat and blackmail. He warned me that if I ever told anyone, he would kill my mother and my father and gladly go to jail, because that was his extent of love for me. He wasn't going to live without me, and he wouldn't let anyone take me away from him. As the firecrackers and sky shots lit up that Diwali sky. I lost my virginity to a man thrice my age, a man I called Pa. He became the abuser and I the victim. How I hate that word. How I hated that helplessness. How I hated the smell of his body and the taste of his mouth and all the nights that brought these horrors with it. But most of all, I hated the disgust that I felt with myself. I wondered if it will wash out with the water or if it's always in the blood. I had no answers, so I overcompensated in the day. I channelized all my energy into performing, going out of my way to perform at everything possible. I took part in all activities under the sky and won them, all the while managing to top my class. This was my attempt at a normal life, a way to make my parents proud, because a way to make my parents proud, because I was bringing a lifetime's worth of shame on them anyway. But girls from my batch were competitive, and they saw me as this arrogant, overachieving, privileged girl who just wanted to have it all. I was dying to tell someone, anyone, that it was just a mask, a facade, a way to feel okay with the kind of person that I was. But I couldn't. He kept a close watch on all my friends, and sadly, nobody lasted long enough for me to confide in them. Year after year, there was a new best friend, and I tested them with juvenile secrets. Sadly, they all let me down. I felt so alone all the time, like I was the only person in this world condemned to this awful fate. I didn't have a friend I could trust with something so big. I didn't have a sibling. I only had my parents. I wanted the burden off of my chest so bad, but nobody could take it off me. And the two people who could were the two that I wanted should never find out. Every time I gathered some courage to tell my mother, I saw how dependent we as a family were on him. I would think the whole family would shatter and fall apart without him in the picture. He had always been the missing piece to our puzzle, and I just didn't know he was supposed to fit in these ways with me. Sometimes I thought this was a sacrifice I needed to make to ensure that I could keep everything running smoothly. At others, I doubted if there was any coming back, since I initiated it and didn't say anything for so long. Maybe it was always in the blood. Because that's the thing. All along, this man made me believe that I wanted this, that I enjoyed it, that I enjoyed sneaking behind my parents' back and lying to them to sleep with him, that I enjoyed him come in my mouth or have sex with me when I was on my period and in immense pain, that I liked it as he made love to me while listening to bhajans of Lord Shiv. It took me so long to understand how this was all a strategy of his, and how I was just a child whose childhood was robbed at his hands. It was an argument with my mother on 13th April 2007. I forgot many dates and blacked out many years of my childhood and adolescence, but this date I remember. We were squabbling over my lack of responsibility, and my mother said to me, "You really need to be more grateful. Your father and I have sacrificed so much for you." This was when I broke my 12-year-long silence and said, "You know nothing about sacrifice." And then I went on to tell her all about mine. When she found out, she cut him out of the family immediately and completely. I begged her not to tell my father because I knew his anger, and I knew if he acted on it, all these years of abuse would have been for nothing. I'm guessing she thought about it for a day or two, but in the end decided that this was too big to be hidden from my father. I remember when she told him I was asleep at night. He walked in and lay beside me on the bed. He was crying and stroking my hair for hours, apologizing to me. When he thought I was asleep, but I had woken up. As I fell asleep again, feeling safe after so long, I was glad he knew. I was glad it was out in the open. But this newfound voice didn't bring a long-lasting relief. It's very easy for the world to tell you that, hey, it's okay, it wasn't your fault. You were just a child. But it takes a whole lot more for you to believe that yourself. It takes years to break the associations, beds, swimming pools, temples, the notion of a God and love. He left bits of him in so many unrelated things that I have had to teach myself to disinfect these memories, to disinfect myself of him. Because that's the thing. I've been calling him a man all along, but he wasn't. He was a pest, and I need to fumigate my insides to rid myself of him repeatedly. It's not an overnight thing. Hell, it's not even a yearly thing. There are reminders of him at every corner. I've had to tell every boy that I dated. I've had to relive it because I needed them to know. Really know me. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But my truth wasn't so easily accepted by my boyfriends. I don't blame them. They were kids too. When things went south with my first boyfriend, he accused me of making the whole thing up because he couldn't wrap his head around it and said this was the only reason he stayed with me for as long as he did. Another boy who was one of my close childhood friends found out about it 2 months into our relationship and said, "You can't just spring this on me and expect me to understand. This is too big." When I told him that I needed time to trust him with this and now that I loved him and I was ready, he broke up with me. He never said he loved me back. He made me doubt if anyone would ever love me with a past like mine. The boy I called my soulmate told his best friend how I'd manipulated him with my sob story and how I wasn't someone who could be trusted. I remember feeling small, defeated, lost. Another close friend once gave me this advice that, you know, Shiromi, any man that you talk about your abuse with will never be able to love you. You really need to stop sharing this story. But it was important to me. I have lived a dual life full of secrets for so long that lying and hiding is just not an option anymore. Honesty, even if it hurts, is all I hold on to. And this honesty is what led me to the one person who has supported me and loved me, not despite my past, but because of it. Aditya. In this long list of Anshumans, this Geet too found her Aditya. We met at a debate that I organized and he won, at a time when I had finally understood that अगर किसी चीज़ को दिल से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात उसे तुमसे मिलाने की कोशिश में लग जाती है. When you really want something, the whole universe conspires in helping you achieve it. This was the one boy I decided to talk about my abuse with way before we started dating. I'd learned the hard way that it always complicated matters later. So the day he told me that he wanted to tell his parents about the girl he liked, me, I told him that I had to share a story with him before he took that call. And as I told him, he rode towards me full speed on an age-old Activa that refused to go over 40 without shaking. And he reached my house before I finished my story. I remember We wept together, and he held me. He held me then, and he's with me now. And he is one of the reasons for the strength I have to finally share this story today. But he isn't the only one. This strength is drawn from two other people, my parents. I have worked tirelessly at rebuilding and strengthening my relationship with them, being honest even when it was difficult. 3 years into my course at medicine, I told my mother how I hated it, and within the blink of an eye, she said, "Quit." My father quoted dialogues from Three Idiots to all his friends who questioned his decision to support mine. From the moment I told them till today, they have been such a huge pillar of strength that I live in awe of them. And in these slow yet sure steps, I have found myself. There are days when I still have nightmares of him. The only thing that has changed is now, even in my most horrible dreams, I speak up. Whether somebody believes me or not, I speak up. Don't lose your integrity over someone who's not worth it. Only then does the process of healing begin. And trust me, the healing never ends. Thank you.